Welcome everyone to another edition of the Roundup. We're on to a long weekend. So we've got summer, what feels like summer coming at us, and we're dealing still with the world of, business and COVID. So we're excited today to have Sonia Johannson join us with her HR background and understanding of people. And Pete and I are glad to share the screen with Sonia because let's face it, there's room on here for the more than just two of us with the technology that we have today. So Pete, what's up?
Well, we've certainly noticed that people don't always want to look at our faces. Maybe heard a comment or two. So Sonia, welcome back. It's nice to have a quick repeat guest on the podcast. And I'm going to tie right in. I'm going to tie right into issues at hand. Right now, we're dealing with all sorts of challenges in the insurance world in terms of remote working, productivity, and the biggest one, accountability. And one of the things that we're seeing coming out in our own sort of trade journals, but also for business in general, is technology and systems to provide accountability for remote workers. So people who are not normally in their home office and away from office. How does this kind of stuff affect morale? How does it affect people's productivity? And what are some tactics that managers and executives should be using around accountability for remote workers?
Well, first of all, I just want to say thanks so much for having me on again, guys. It's a pleasure to be back again. In terms of the accountability piece, when people are working from home, there's always going to be it's going to be a different dynamic. You're going to find that people are not going to be working necessarily the exact same hours that they were in the office. You may find that they are more productive at home. But right now, let's face it, people are currently having to deal with kids at home in many cases, spouses also at home working. So, some things to keep in mind while, you're dealing with your staff at home is that they have a lot of other focuses right now. So some compassion around that and some, just being aware of what's going on with your employees behind the scenes. Now, in terms of productivity, rather than worrying about how long your employee's bum is in the seat and whether or not they're sitting there at 8 a.m. and working until 4 p.m., look at the output. In terms of insurance, I know that there are a lot of ways that we can watch how things are going. We also don't want to seem like Big Brother in that situation either, because that is going to put people off, and you're all of a sudden going to see a productivity decrease if people are feeling that they're being watched and not trusted.
Well, there's no question that people are, you said this, Sonia, people are finding it challenging to work from home. And just being out there, speaking to people in different sectors, this feeling of, wow, that's it for commercial space. People aren't going to really want to go back to work anymore now that they can work from home. I've heard just the opposite this week. I get out to speak to very broad spectrum of people in various industries. If, I spoke to 10 people, 8 of them said, I'm looking forward to getting back to work. I love having a routine. I like getting up, making my lunch, going in, knowing that I'm going to get these tasks done and then get on with my personal life where I can segment those because now they're not all in one physical space. They're in different physical spaces. So I think that's going to bring a really interesting aha moment to everybody, because for a long time, we all thought, this is great. We're all working from home, and now all of a sudden you're hearing a bit of a different twist to it.
Yeah, Sonia, do you think then, to Curt's point, that we're going to see a reshaping of the office space over time? Like we're going to learn about what makes for a more enjoyable space, what we should be curating in our offices to make them functional and desirable places, maybe a little more efficient, to bring some of the things we've learned from people working at home into the office? Do you think there'll be a shift in how HR managers, how designers and sort of environmental consultants for office space sort of look at what the office space is?
Well, there's no doubt that there's going to be a change and a shift at this point. Employers have been forced to look at ways of having their employees work from home and have had to very quickly move in that direction. very successfully in most cases, which is amazing to see. And that's really opened up a lot of possibilities. In terms of what you were saying, Curt, I truly believe that idea of, leaving the house in the morning and getting back to work, a lot of people are feeling that need to have that routine again. But that also is a very personal thing. And I think you'll find there are some people who will be very happy with the situation that they're in right now. And, depending on your personality, if you're a person who needs to be away and doing your thing somewhere else and then coming back home and having that time, kind of compartmentalizing your life, that's definitely something they're going to want to get back to work for. But I think we're going to find that there's a lot of people who are going to want to have at least a balance, have that flexibility to be in the office maybe a few days a week and then have a day or two at home, or if there's the necessity to be at home, that they have that flexibility. I think companies are now going to be better prepared to handle that as well. In terms of being in the office and how we can make that a better place for, a little homier, I guess, is that what you're saying, Pete, in terms of,
Yeah, and you brought up something there, and I'm just going to keep rambling my thoughts off as I normally do. But maybe we get into a work share environment within one company so that people don't always have to be in the office. You can reduce your footprint and you book time. So I'm going to use this desk, or I'm going to use this space 3 days a week, and you shift out with people, and it's a rotating sort of system. But yeah, that's what I was asking. Sorry, just random thoughts here.
And I think a hybrid is likely what we're going to see of this, is some version of the fact that, does it mean that 5 days a week in the office is the best solution for everybody? Or is it 3 days at the office and 2 days working remotely? And inside of that remote work time, you can accomplish more function from a work perspective and maybe on your personal level. So then this way, like back to our first interview with Sonia about having a happy employee, you're building that happiness in, you're getting a little more productivity on those days they're not in the office. They can do things uninterrupted, as we like to say in the industry. I think that's a win. So yeah, how can it not be worth a try? Like Pete said, one last show, is you bring things back from what you did before, and you introduce the things that you've done now as the new things, and it's a combination of the two. It's not just cut and dry. This is what we're doing.
Yeah, flexibility is huge. I think that is something that we are hearing more and more now in this day and age. We need to have flexibility with our employees. They have lives. We need to be able to trust them, when they are working from home, and make sure they feel trusted. And you will see that output and the benefits of that. So it'll be interesting to see how things move forward and how employers will start to adapt.
Sonia, when people look at offices and they look at the remote teams that they have and everything, what are some tips they can do about keeping the dialogue and connectivity alive? Like, should they be doing check-ins regularly? Is there some sort of basic baseline that you should be using rather than contacting as needed? Oh, I got to follow up about this. Should there be sort of a reporting thing that everyone is sort of accountable to each other? Is that something that companies could sort of interject, like whether it be sales meetings, all sorts of things? But
and what keeps employees' health up too, right? Like, what's the healthy piece to that, not just the accountability piece, right? To keep them mentally sound that they're doing a good job.
Well, a huge part of working from home and having employees working from home is keeping in touch with them, and keeping in touch with them, like you say, in a way where, what can I do for you? What are you missing? Is there something that we can do to help you be more productive at home? More so than, hey, are you at your desk? Are you working? What are you up to? Kind of thing. Definitely the check-ins are a big deal. And Pete, to your point, having meetings and just scheduling time with your teammates and your employees via Zoom. They say that using video in meetings rather than just phone meetings makes a huge difference for morale, for people to see each other face to face. Because right now it's tough. We've been working from home now. We don't see our coworkers. It's really difficult to connect sometimes. And so when we see each other face to face, that's a big deal. So if at all possible, use the technology, do Zoom or whatever platform you use, and and you'll find that definitely makes a difference with your employees.
That's such a good point, because I literally had a meeting overlap conflict last week, and I checked into one really quick just to say hi to two people who I literally hadn't laid eyes on just because of schedules, both of whom had young children, and they were
Hmm.
working different hours because no childcare, and
Hmm.
young children just don't cooperate when you want to work from home. And you just checked in to say, hey, so great to see your face. And then it was like, hey, I'm out to something else. But it felt nice. And it sort of, I think it for them, because I was sort of the senior sort of person in this group, was nice. I think my intention was just to say, hey, I just wanted to see you, not worry about work, but here's just a nice thing to talk about, sort of thing. Hey, I just wanted to know you're okay and lay eyes on you. And it felt good for me. And I hope it got
Hmm.
received that way. Um, I want to tie this into something a little more specific with insurance, and that there's an interesting thing going on now in the insurance world where companies are dealing with curbside pickup and some of the ramifications of us whipping in, grabbing something, and leaving. But then in the cases, there's lineups and stuff like that, and you're now asking your staff to take on a different role. We all know that everyone's got to be safe in COVID, Sonia, but how should you address this when your business model changes and you're asking staff to actually do things that are different from what they were hired for? Like job descriptions are out the window now. How do you address that, right? How do you address that? Because from an insurance side, we think of liability and risk when you change your business operations and how that changes your insurance needs. But how does that change things with employee contracts and their sort of right to refuse or not refuse, depending on the situation?
Oh, the right to refuse. Yeah. And that's, I think, a thing with COVID right now for anybody, asking people to come in and work, with the potential of just COVID being in the workplace. Um, yeah, that is an interesting question, Pete. I think that in terms of, there's always going to be a little bit of play in a job description. So, there's always that disclaimer, duties as assigned kind of thing
Yeah.
that we can use
Always
to
have that in your contract. Duties as a
every time. Um, Within reason, right? So as long as the job to be done is to handle customers and to deal with customers, and sometimes that looks a little bit different. It's having the dialogue with your staff and being transparent about that, making sure that expectations are known well ahead of time, taking the temperature with your staff and asking them how they're feeling about this. I mean, the communication piece is a really big deal here. You want to make sure that they even have input in how their jobs are going to move forward if it has to be different. If there is, if things are going to be extremely different, or if it's going to be for a longer period of time than just a short period of time, then you might want to look at revamping job descriptions and that sort of thing if things are going to change, and that might mean that you have people who are not going to stick around or may move on because of those changes. But I think with COVID, things are still pretty temporary. I think we'll see things somewhat get back to normal.
And on an insurance twist, I mean, as insurance brokers, we're telling our business owners to do certain things to mitigate risk around reopening in this environment. So, in many ways, we got to walk what we talk. So, with our own organizations, it's a matter of saying, what are those risks? Like Sonia said, how do you build in tools to protect the consumer who's coming in to get professional advice, or protect the consumer who's waiting in line to get their item from their the grocery store or what have you. So the insurance piece of this is quite interesting. It's going to continue to evolve, but at the same time, there's some very clear steps that are in place that businesses need to be taking. And small mom pop shops are reopening now. I mean, the essential services had to work quick to figure out what was needed. The red circles on the floor and all that stuff. But today we're reopening mom pop shops who really, guidelines, so right. Uh, it's important that brokers be very vocal about what the guidelines from an insurance standpoint should be. Otherwise, we could be seeing some losses coming through. Like Pete said, there is a liability here, and it does extend beyond the doors of the building, and it is out on the street. It's the sidewalk. It's simply things like getting out there and looking at that sidewalk those people are standing on. brokers you need to talk to your customers about this stuff. This isn't stuff we talked about all the time, maybe ice and slip and fall, but now we're really diving into it and saying your store is now in the parking lot. Make sure it's as safe as it was when they were within your location. That's a new message. Brokers need to get it out.
You're now having people stand in the parking lot for service, and there's cars whizzing by. It's a total game shifter. Sonia, one of the other things that's happening, right, is we're starting to see various spots around reopen. So businesses that may have had layoffs of, small business with some layoffs, large scale business with thousands, hundreds or thousands of people laid off, they're going to be bringing people back in. But is there something that as a business owner you should be thinking of as you reopen when it comes to your staff? And will this affect, say, employee contracts? Will there be adjustments in like what happens in terms of you hire new or you recreate positions? Should people be thinking about something with their contracts and staff and HR issues as they reopen and sort of migrate back to the old way of doing things?
Yeah, that is a good question, Pete. Well, with reopening, I don't know if contracts would really need to be changed unless, again, you're seeing that the job is essentially changing. And then in that case, you would need to renegotiate. In terms of people coming back to work, well, you do hope that people are coming back. I think that you had mentioned in terms of should they hire new, should they bring back the same people. I guess it is kind of a time when you can kind of reassess things like that as a business. I think everybody who has been off is going to hopefully want to be back to work if at all possible. But, some things to think about is, a safe workplace. Obviously, employees are going to be wanting to make sure that their families are safe, and that as they're coming back to the workplace with COVID being still a real thing, that the cleaning piece and ensuring that they're not having that face-to-face with customers. I know you go to the grocery store, we see those screens that are up and the shields up. We don't have that necessarily in the brokerages. So the safety part of it is a really big piece of people coming back to work for sure.
Just my insurance brain just went into overdrive there when you said that. There are now going to be cleaners in situations for contractors who provide cleaning services. They're going to start making things like COVID sanitary. They're going to advertise based around on COVID and offer guarantees.
Probably.
Yeah. And it's necessary, but there's a massive liability. You're making a guarantee. And the insurance side, the risk side is how liable are cleaners going to be now in the future, depending on what the standards are and what's expected.
And on the insurance podcast, we love technology. We spend a lot of time talking about it and how it affects the industry. Simple tools like these walk up temperature, take your temperature type work devices that you can be purchasing. They're already, you could Google them. They're already out there. They're not that expensive. They're not cheap either, but they're definitely available. How quickly will organizations start to install these and have, this in their vestibule, where it's expected that, before you enter that you have to sort of log in and answer 3 questions. I've heard from a lot of people who've gotten certain services done where you go through a list and certain things need to be asked. And it's not just about protecting the consumer, it's protecting that employee, like you said, Sonia and Pete. But it's going to be really interesting to see what tools we can put in to make sure that happens and it keeps the client still at a distance while those questions are being answered. And one of the ones I saw online, really cool, just a little upright thing with an iPad, and it had the laser temperature thermometer on it, and 3 questions, boom, 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 where have you been, this type of stuff. And it's taking your temperature at the same time. I mean, you come back and it's at 102, then a red light's coming up saying, you know what, please head home and phone us. We'd prefer not to meet with you. So those are some pretty basic tools that businesses may need to be looking at putting in when they're seeing a lot of customers that could risk their employees at getting sick. So simple stuff, but complex process in getting it working. Easier to click and buy than it is to actually make it work in your business.
Exactly. And I think that's what that's the wrestling art part that everyone's going to have, whether it's insurance or something else. Is it easier for us to invest in click and buy than it is to open and have a consumer experience? And there's going to be some organizations who figure this out really well for what the experience is, and there's going to be others who pivot really well and realize I don't need the space to do my sales. And where people have resisted online before or thought maybe their product wouldn't work online, they're going to find that might be the only way they can sell it. But again, that's going to be fascinating to watch. But hey, that's it for the roundup. So Sonia, thanks for taking a little bit of time out on your holiday Monday for us. And we look forward to catching up in the future.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Have a great week, everyone.
Yeah, everyone have a great week. Thanks.
Take care.